Good afternoon. I call to order the November 10th regular meeting of the Minneapolis Heritage Preservation Commission. For the record, my name is Marie Bjornberg, and I serve as chair of the commission. Just a reminder to silence your cell phones and other electronic devices and to speak clearly into the microphone when speaking at the dais or giving testimony. Would the clerk please call the roll so that we may verify the presence of a quorum?
Commissioner Alexander is absent. Booty.
Present.
Hare.
Present.
Corrado is absent. Melblom.
Present.
Rodriguez.
Present.
Thomas.
Present.
Wallace is absent. Vice Chair Maston.
Present.
Chair Bjornberg.
Present.
There are 7 members present.
Let the record reflect that we do have quorum and that Commissioner Wallace provided proper notice that they have a conflict this afternoon and their absence is excused. Our first order of business is to adopt the agenda for this meeting. We will work from the agendas that are available by the clerk, and I will go through the agenda and sort out which items will be discussed and which items will be put on the consent agenda to be approved as recommended by staff and without further discussion. Okay, item number 4 is 119 4th Street North, Ward 7, adjacent to Ward 3. This application is for a certificate of appropriateness and will be on consent unless someone wants to speak in opposition to or modify the staff recommendation. Item number 5 is 415 1st Street North, Ward 3. This application is for a certificate of appropriateness and will be on consent unless someone wants to speak in opposition to or modify the staff recommendation. Item number 6 is 107 3rd Avenue North, Ward 3. This application is for a certificate of appropriateness and will be on consent unless someone wants to speak in opposition to or modify the staff recommendation. Item number 7 is 1505 Central Avenue Northeast, Ward 1. This application is for delisting from the National Register of Historic Places and will be discussed. Item number 8 is 100 2nd Avenue North, Ward 3. This application is for a certificate of appropriateness and will be on consent unless someone wants to speak in opposition to or modify the staff recommendation. Item number 9 is 300 1st Avenue North, Ward 7. This application is for a certificate of appropriateness and will be on consent unless someone wants to speak in opposition to or modify the staff recommendation. Item number 10 is partial 2026 HPC calendar, all wards, and this item will be discussed. So, the proposed agenda is the consent agenda, which will include item number 4, 119 4th Street North, Ward 7, adjacent to Ward 3. Item number 5, 415 1st Street North, Ward 3. Item number 6, 107 3rd Avenue North, Ward 3. Item 8, 100 2nd Avenue North, Ward 3. Item 9, 300 1st Avenue North, Ward 7. Is there any opposition from commissioners to the staff recommendations for these items? Is there anyone in the public that wishes to speak in opposition to these items? Okay. Which item do you wish to pull from consent? Number 9, and you want to pull that from consent?
There's one item on there that I would like a modification.
Okay, so the following items will have staff presentation and public comment and commission discussion and action. That will be item number 7, 1505 Central Avenue Northeast, Ward 1. Item number 9, 300 1st Avenue North, Ward 7. And then the following item will have staff presentation, commission discussion without a public hearing, which is item number 10, partial 2026 HPC calendar, all wards. Commissioners, may I have a motion to approve the proposed agenda?
Maston so moves.
Thank you, Commissioner Maston. Is there a second?
Melblom seconds.
Thank you, Commissioner Mulblum. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Any abstentions? Okay, the agenda is approved. Our next order of business will be to approve the minutes from our October 14th, 2025 meeting. May I have a motion to approve those minutes?
Thomas so moves.
Thank you, Commissioner Thomas. Is there a second?
Rodriguez seconds.
Thank you, Commissioner Rodriguez. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Any abstentions, including commissioners who were absent? Okay. The minutes are approved. Before I open the hearing to public comments, let me summarize the process for conducting the public hearing. First, we will act on the consent agenda we just set. Once items on the consent agenda are approved, the commission is done with those items, and applicants may contact planning staff tomorrow about next steps. After the consent agenda items are approved, we will take each remaining agenda item in order. Planning staff will present its report, and commissioners may ask questions of staff. Then I will open the public hearing, and we will hear from the applicant, and commissioners may ask questions of the applicant. After that, we will invite public comment. If you wish to speak, we need you to do two things. Please be sure to sign up on the sheet over by the clerk. If you haven't done this already, you can do so afterwards. When you come up to testify, you must state your name and address for the record. Please keep comments specific to the application before us. If you have materials to hand out, please give them to our committee clerk so that they can be distributed to the commission and entered into the record. After public comments are complete, I will close the hearing and commissioners will deliberate and act upon the applications before us. So, I will now open the public hearing on the consent agenda items. Item number 4, 119 4th Street North, Ward 7, adjacent to Ward 3. Item 5, 415 1st Street North, Ward 3. Item 6, 107 3rd Avenue North, Ward 3. Item 8, 100 2nd Avenue North, Ward 3. Again, do commissioners oppose staff recommendations for these items? Are there any members of the public who oppose staff recommendations for these items? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing on the consent agenda items. May I have a motion to approve staff findings and recommendations for these items?
Melblum so moves.
Thank you, Commissioner Melblum. Is there a second?
Maston seconds.
Thank you, Commissioner Maston. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Any abstentions? Okay. These items are approved as recommended by staff on the agenda, and applicants may contact planning staff about next steps. Our first item is item number 7, 1505 Central Avenue Northeast, Ward 1. This application is for delisting from the National Register of Historic Places. The staff report is presented by Rob Skalecki.
Thank you, Chair Bjornberg, and good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Rob Skalecki, Senior City Planner in the Historic Preservation team in CPED, and today I'm presenting the removal of from the National Register of Historic Places for the Aaron Carlson Corporation Factory, which is located at 1505 Central Avenue Northeast. On October 16th, 2025, the Minnesota Deputy State Historic Preservation Officer sent the Minneapolis HPC a letter requesting comments on the proposed removal of the property located at 1505 Central Avenue Northeast from the National Register of Historic Places. This letter was included as attachment number 1 for commissioners to view. As a certified local government, the Commission is required by federal law to participate in the National Register process as follows. as related to the removal from the National Register process or delisting. One, to afford the public a reasonable opportunity to comment on the removal of the property from the National Register of Historic Places. Two, to prepare a report as to whether or not the qualities which caused the property to be listed have been lost or destroyed. And three, to have the chief elected official, in this situation the mayor, submit the report and his or her comments on the removal of the property from the National Register of Historic Places to the Minnesota State Historic Preservation Officer within 60 days of notice from the State Historic Preservation Office. Currently available materials that were provided by the State Historic Preservation Office were included as attachments for your consideration, and that's under attachment number 2. The Aaron Carlson Corporation factory was listed in the National Register of Historic Places on October 7th, 2020. The property is only listed in the National Register of Historic Places. The property is not locally designated as a historic landmark by the city of Minneapolis, so that's why the review here today is not through a formal application. Founded in Minneapolis in 1891, the Aaron Carlson Sash and Door Company built a reputation for custom millwork. The founder, Aaron Carlson, was a Swedish immigrant who began his Minnesota career working in Stillwater lumber camps in the 1880s. After working as a foreman in the Flower City Sash and Door Factory, Carlson found his own woodworking business and recruited men from Sweden to work as carpenters at the firm. The company manufactured millwork for public buildings and upper-class homes until World War II, when the company shifted its operation to the production of wood components for pontoon bridges. The company's skill in finely crafted wood building components and its proximity to a rail line made it a natural fit for the production and shipping of pontoon bridge components to U.S. troops in the European and Pacific theaters of World War II. The nomination noted this background and also noted the property at the time maintained excellent integrity from its period of significance from 1940 to 1945. So the nomination states that the Aaron Carlson Corporation is historically significant under National Register Criterion A industry for its association with the wartime lumber industry in Minneapolis. As the only Minneapolis lumber mill to win the Army-Navy E Award for its contribution to the war effort through its manufacture of pontoon bridge components during World War II. At the time of the nomination, the Aaron Carlson Corporation factory retained good historic integrity and was able to convey its historic significance to be eligible for listing in the National Register of Historic Places. The Aaron Carlson Corporation site was an excellent example of late 19th and early 20th century manufacturing in a complex which exemplified the manufacturing process. In a memo filed dated October 15, 2025, the State Historic Preservation Office did note, however, that based on their review, it was in their opinion and it was in the State Historic Preservation Office's opinion that the Aaron Carlson Company factory removal documentation had been adequately prepared and that the property had ceased to meet criteria for listing because of qualities which caused it to be listed have been lost or destroyed. And here's a photo that was included in the State Historic Preservation Office's materials in support of that memo that was produced. CPED staff had been involved in the project and aware of the building since its listing, of course, in 2020. In February 2025, representatives from the property ownership did contact staff to explore demolishing the building after their plans for rehabilitation, reuse, or redevelopment at that time appeared to be no longer possible. So since the property is National Register listed, staff informed them earlier this year that a demolition of historic resource application would be required in order to gain approval for demolition. Staff did hold a pre-application meeting on February 13th, 2025, and another follow-up meeting on April 14th, 2025, but staff did not hear back from the applicants after that. On September 7th, 2025, the Aaron Carlson Corporation factory was significantly damaged by a large fire. Staff do want to note that in an October 24th, 2025 email, the Minneapolis Assistant Building Official notified planning staff that Minneapolis Construction Code Services staff had not deemed the remaining structures to be in imminent danger of collapse, and that they were not a hazard to the neighboring properties or the public right-of-way at this time. There's currently no intent for the city to pursue emergency demolition, given what we know at the site currently, and the cause of fire is still under investigation. But understanding the loss of historic integrity, staff is recommending that the Heritage Preservation Commission recommends that the Aaron Carlson Corporation factory, located at 1505 Central Avenue Northeast, no longer retains sufficient historic integrity to be listed in the National Register of Historic Places, and directs staff to transmit a letter summarizing their opinion and comments to the State Historic Preservation Officer. And with that, I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you for that presentation. Commissioners, are there questions for staff? I guess I have a sort of like procedural question. So this is not locally designated. Does that mean that if it was National Register delisted and the demolition permit got put in, would that still get reviewed by your office?
Chair Bjornberg, thank you for that question. That's something that we were discussing, throughout, as soon as the fire happened, and kind of we understood what path this had been on previously, given staff meeting with the property owner. I may defer to Andrea Burke about this. I think she has the best understanding of this, but there are certain state rules that we have to go through in order to be able to demolish it, and delisting is one of the steps to be able to do that. But I'll defer to Andrea if she has any more comments.
Andrea Burke.
Yeah, thank you. Chair Bjornberg, to answer your question, yes, it still would get a review. However, how we proceed with that review depends on this delisting at this point, because the way the state statute reads is that any demolition in whole or in part of a National Register listed building must get an EAW unless it gets a Heritage Preservation Commission review, or 106, there's some other language in the law, but then an exception is if the property is deemed non-contributing or basically has lost its significance is another way to approach it. So at this point, the delisting has to come to you for comments. It then goes to the State Review Board. It also then finally goes to the National Park Service to have their comments and decision on whether or not it actually becomes delisted. At that point, once it does, we would be able to sign off on a wrecking without bringing it to HPC, because it would no longer be listed in the National Register. Now, if a demolition wanted to come through before, I think there's a couple options to pursue. But at this point, that is the route we are planning to take, given that no wrecking has come through at this point in time. But it is still listed in the National Register, but we do have a few options just based on some letters we've received from SHPO. Thank you.
Thank you, that's helpful. And just to be clear, you're looking for comments on this so that there is something to transmit to SHPO about that, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Other questions for staff from commissioners? Commissioner Rodriguez.
Sure, thank you. So there was one photo kind of post-fire in there that seemed to kind of have been somewhat officially taken. Am I remembering correctly that that was the only photo that was in the report? Were there others?
Chair Bjornberg, Commissioner Rodriguez, that's the only one that staff received through what SHPO transmitted to us. Currently, as of today, this is the only photo that's on their agenda too for the State Review Board. Okay.
I mean, it kind of seems to me like this isn't quite a thorough overview of the property. We'll have discussion later, but I would have appreciated, I think, maybe a few more photos within the report. But thank you.
One other question. I want to make sure that I'm understanding correctly. So the delisting, the action of delisting was initiated by the current property owner, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Any other questions for staff from commissioners? Okay, thank you. I will now open public comment for this item. Are there any members of the public that wish to speak for or against this item? Seeing none, I'll close public comment. Commissioners, let's discuss. I'll go ahead and start off that, like, again, this is one of those places that I see like multiple times a day as a Northeast resident, and I absolutely love this building and was like devastated when it was on fire, the like many various times that it has been on fire in the last while. And similarly was like asking the question of, it seems like that like really iconic tower fixture is still standing, and I understand that there's not a whole lot of integrity from the one photo that we saw of the very, very burned down building, but I would just still love if that one tower could stand. And so I think that that's why I was trying to figure out, like, if it gets delisted, is there anything to preserve it? Commissioner Melblom.
You're referring to the smokestack, correct?
Commissioner Rodriguez.
Thank you. I guess I have a few more thoughts kind of connected to that. Because it kind of seemed like in the, I think it was the SHPO documentation that was in the packet that we received, that there was a whole kind of complex of several buildings that were kind of individually listed as contributing and non-contributing. And it kind of seems important to me that we have a more thorough understanding of which of those buildings have been affected and how badly, as to then be able to kind of have an opinion as to how much integrity may or may not remain.
Other thoughts from commissioners? I mean, I'll go ahead and say I would agree with that. Yeah, I think that a little bit more information and digging into it would be helpful. Commissioner Maston.
Maybe I'll just ask you, Chair Bjornberg, from your daily travels, how much of the building looks like it's there? Is it really just a smokestack, or is there any integrity left of the buildings that you see? Google
Really?
Maps still shows the old.
I'm like, really great question. I will also say, like, I don't know that I can make a really great determination of like structurally what is in good shape. I think that I'm going to keep referring to it as, what did I say? The tower. You said smokestack. The tower smokestack looks like it's okay. And, I think that that's where it's unfortunate that it's sort of like a all or nothing type of situation, it seems like here. Commissioner Melblom.
Yeah, but I agree, because according to Google Maps, it looks like there's probably, looks like the building's been added on to 4 or 5 or maybe even 6 times, and then there's a separate looking building next to it. So if that separate building is completely intact, is that a problem? And yeah, I don't have a sense of what's there and what's not there. Obviously, the smokestack and the building in the foreground is gone.
Yeah, I guess maybe I would say that that's like even more of a reason to sort of support the argument for more information for taking such a drastic measure of delisting, especially I think when it means that I feel like it's going to lead to eventual. Commissioner Melblom.
Are we allowed to hold this item over to our next meeting?
So I don't know if we are, but probably not, because of the state review board. I believe they're waiting for comments by, I feel like I read the 17th. But we are just trying to develop comments to then send to them that will be part of that state review board hearing? I'm looking at Andrea Burke, like, can you confirm that?
Chair Bjornberg, that's correct. The HPC is only issuing comment. There's no approval to dial on this. The State Review Board meeting's on November 17th. So if you would like your comments to be considered, you would need to make them tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Melblom.
I have a question for Andrea. Andrea, are you collecting our comments based on our conversation, or do we have to put the comments into a formal motion?
Chair Bjornberg and Commissioner Melblom, we're collecting them as during your conversation. Thank you.
Commissioner Corrado.
I guess I have similar thoughts in that I understand that the integrity of the entire complex doesn't exist, but there are portions that seem to still be extant and in, I guess, safe condition, since the city is not seeking demolition immediately. Based on that, to me, I don't think delisting is the proper course of action, rather perhaps redefining what is protected, which the specific elements that might be protected, if that's possible. I'm assuming it is, but.
Thanks. I have another question. Oh, sorry. Commissioner Thomas.
I really was going to say pretty much the same thing that was just said. I would also love to make a comment that, hey, if the whole building can't be saved, the whole complex, maybe even just the smokestack being protected and changed on the National Register would be something that I would like to see happen.
Other comments from commissioners? I had a question. I'm trying to remember it. I don't remember. Commissioner Maston.
I think I agree with my fellow commissioners that are having concerns about just delisting the entire thing, because then we're taking away the memory of this place from this site, where if there is some way to acknowledge, even if it is the smokestack, as Commissioner Thomas was suggesting, there is something that is still connected to that place. So.
Other commissioner comments? Yeah. Commissioner Melblom.
Thank you. I'm curious if it's found that the reason for the building having burnt down is something done with ill intention. How does that play out with the idea that the building can be demolished? That kind of is a concern of mine. It's a valuable piece of property. It's been vacant, kind of empty for a long time, and catches fire several times, finally burns down a good portion of it, or maybe all of it, we're not sure, but it's like the thing that keeps sticking in my mind is the idea that if it's not stated, that concern, I realize they're doing an investigation, but it concerns me that we are helping to aid and abet something that is nefarious. I know it's not our purview, but it just sits with me.
Yeah, I agree with that comment, especially just sort of understanding the context of like in February, pursuing the route of working with HPC staff to understand what the steps to demolish the property would be, and then just like conveniently, which like, I don't know, can't make any judgment calls on that, but is interesting. I did remember my question, and this is going to be for staff. Are there any, similar to how if there is a locally designated property, I'm going to use all the wrong names for this, people can come by and see that maintenance isn't happening and charge penalties. Is there anything like that for a property that is not National Register or not locally designated? So like this property that's been vacant and in poor condition and now has sort of been damaged by fire, is that something that there have been fees associated with the lack of maintenance on it?
Chair Bjornberg, to answer your question regarding enforcement for this, so there is, as you are aware, an article in the current Chapter 599 regarding maintenance. There are other enforcement ordinances through other groups, such as vacant building. Basically, it's through regulatory services. Regardless of its designation status, yes, regulatory services maintains its own program. I don't know offhand whether or not this building was on the vacant building register, or if there was anything relative to prolonged vacancy enforcement. I don't think there maybe would have been housing, but there's a variety of fines and citations that the city provides through regulatory services that CPET does not necessarily, we don't govern. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from commissioners on this item? Commissioner Melblom.
Thank you, Chair Brunberg. So it looks like we're supposed to make a motion, but I don't think we want to, what I'm hearing is the sense is that we don't want to make a motion recommending and agreeing with the idea that there no longer retains sufficient historic integrity. So maybe this is a question for staff. Can we make a motion? Should we not make a motion, or should we make a motion just stating exactly that we don't, the sense of our group is that we don't believe that there's sufficient information to judge this, what we're being asked to do?
Chair Bjornberg and Commissioner Melblom, it would be the latter. I would suggest making a motion that you don't believe there's sufficient integrity or information, however you want to word it, but I would still make the motion to direct staff to transmit your comments in a letter to the State Historic Preservation Office, because that's the required action that needs to happen. Thank you.
Commissioner Melblom?
I will make the motion. So I would make the motion that the Heritage Preservation Commission cannot recommend that the Aaron Carlson factory located at 1505 Central Avenue Northeast retains sufficient historic integrity to be listed in the National Register of Historic Places, and we direct staff to transmit a letter summarizing our comments and opinion to the State Historic Preservation Officer.
Andrea Burke.
Chair Bjornberg, Commissioner Melblom, can you read that one more time? Because I misheard a word, and I want to make sure it's the right word that we're communicating. Thank you.
The Heritage Preservation Commission cannot recommend that the Aaron Carlson Corporation factory located at 1505 Central Avenue Northeast retains sufficient historic integrity to be listed in the National Register of Historic Places, and direct staff to transmit a letter summarizing our opinions and comments to the State Historic Preservation Officer.
I was like, I feel like you maybe don't want the word cannot. I think that you want to recommend that blah, 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 retains sufficient historic integrity to be listed in the National Register, and direct staff to transmit a letter summarizing that.
But I think we don't want to recommend that it be delisted.
No, yeah, that it.
You either cannot recommend and no longer retains, or recommend.
Oh, I see. Okay, I accept that, yes. Thank you.
Should we read that again, or do we feel like we have?
Please, Chair Bjornberg, one more time, please.
Okay, all right, let's see. The Heritage Preservation Commission recommends that the Aaron Carlson Corporation factory located at 1505 Central Avenue Northeast retain sufficient historic integrity to be listed in the National Register of Historic Places, and directs staff to transmit a letter summarizing their opinion and comments to the State Historic Preservation Officer.
Thank you, I got it.
Is there a second?
Corrado seconds.
I have a recommendation, because I think the issue is that we don't have enough information to make a judgment, right? So it's not that we think that it retains the sufficient historic integrity, we don't know. And that's why I was saying we cannot recommend that it no longer retains sufficient historic integrity, because we don't know if it does or it doesn't. We don't have enough information in front of us. That was kind of what I heard from people. So I think inserting the word cannot recommend and keeping all the other language. And I realize I left out the words no longer. That was the confusing part.
Since there's a second, do we have to call the roll, or can there be a friendly?
I feel like having a friendly amendment, as if you're all in agreement, would be fine.
Okay, so the friendly amendment is to add Preservation Commission cannot recommend that the Aaron Carlson Corporation factory located at 1505 Central Avenue Northeast no longer retains blah, 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 blah.
Correct. Because I don't think we have the information to make that judgment. That's what I was hearing people saying.
I have that. Thank you, Chair Bjornberg.
Sorry.
No, it's a journey. Any further discussion? Seeing none, would the clerk call the roll? Those are always hard.
On the amended language. Booty. Aye. Hare. Aye. Corrado. Aye. Melblom.
Aye.
Rodriguez.
Aye.
Thomas.
Aye.
Vice Chair Maston.
Aye.
Chair Bjornberg.
Aye.
There are 8 ayes.
Thank you. That motion passes. Our next item is item number 9, 300 First Avenue North, Ward 7. This application is for a certificate of appropriateness, and the staff report is presented by Erin Kay.
Good afternoon, Chair Bjornberg and Commissioners. My name is Erin Kay, and I'm a Senior City Planner in the Historic Preservation subsection of the Department of Community Planning and Economic Development, or CPED. I'm here today to present a Certificate of Appropriateness application for the property located at 300 First Avenue North in the Minneapolis Warehouse Historic District. Here is an aerial view of the property's location. And here are views of the property's southeast and northeast elevations. The building was constructed in 1887 as a warehouse. It is a 5-story brick and stone building with characteristics of the Richardsonian Romanesque style. It is a contributing resource to the Minneapolis Warehouse Historic District. This application covers 3 alterations. The first alteration is to demolish a non-functional utilitarian chimney on the northwest elevation. The applicant has provided documentation from a masonry contractor that addresses the chimney's structural deficiencies and indicates that the chimney needs to be demolished. To preserve the chimney, it would need to be rebuilt, and the applicant felt this approach was cost prohibitive, especially since the chimney is not used. Staff have analyzed the chimney and found that it does not appear to be a character-defining feature of the property, and it is subordinate to the high architectural detail of the primary elevation. Staff consider demolition without rebuilding to be appropriate in this case. The contractor provided 2 different bids to the applicant related to the removal of the brick chimney. The selected option is to let the chimney brick fall into itself. Staff do have some concerns about the safety of this approach. Therefore, we are recommending a condition of approval to ensure that the chimney removal does not cause damage to the building or create unsafe conditions for pedestrians or other property, such as cars, given that this is next to a parking lot. The second alteration is for building lighting on the two primary elevations. The applicant would like to highlight the building's architectural features through up-down lighting and enhance the pedestrian experience of the historic district. The applicant is also concerned about making sure no critical features are obscured or damaged in the process. What's shown on this slide here are concepts that have not been finalized. Each light fixture would measure 4 feet long by 2.5 inches by 2 inches, an example of which is shown at right during a test. The applicant initially considered 3 fixtures on each of the pilasters on both elevations. Staff had some concern about the number of fixtures, as well as how the lowest light fixture would be attached to the building and where the conduits would run. In conversation with the applicant indicated that 2 fixtures is likely more feasible in the budget. And also, she shared concerns about not wanting to obscure character-defining features. As such, staff are recommending a condition of approval to limit the number of light fixtures on each pilaster to 2. The concept is to attach 2 fixtures with a metal bracket so that one fixture could shine upward and the other could shine downward. The attachment would rest on the water table and any attachments would go through the mortar joints. However, given that some of the details are still being refined, including the exact design of that bracket, staff recommend a condition of approval that the applicant will work with staff to finalize the design and ensure that the fixtures will not harm or obscure character-defining features, that the conduits will be minimally visible, and that any attachments will go through the mortar joints. Staff shall approve the lighting details prior to installation. The applicant also suggested a condition of approval that they would work with staff to install and evaluate one light fixture first before doing the remainders. Staff appreciated that suggestion and recommend including it as a condition of your approval. As I noted, the applicant and her team have not finalized the design of the bracket, and the intent of these conditions is we want to work with them to ensure that it doesn't cover up any of the character-defining features on the building. The final alteration is to install catenary lights across the parking lot, which is located to the northwest of the building and on the same parcel. 3/4-inch eye hooks would attach to the northwest elevation of the building, and up to 4 freestanding metal posts would be installed on the opposite side of the parking lot. The lights would be hung in a zigzag pattern between the posts and hooks. The intent is to increase lighting in the area and contribute to public safety measures. The applicant plans to attach the hooks through the mortar joints, and staff are recommending a condition of approval to ensure that. As conditioned by staff, we believe the project complies with the design guidelines and the standards. Therefore, staff recommend that the Heritage Preservation Commission adopt staff findings and approve the certificate of appropriateness to remove a chimney and make exterior lighting changes for the property located at 300 First Avenue North in the Minneapolis Warehouse Historic District, subject to the following conditions. Number 1, eye hooks to hold the catenary lights shall be installed through the mortar joints. Number 2, the applicant shall work with preservation staff to finalize the up-down lighting design and ensure that the fixtures will not harm or obscure character-defining features, that the conduits will be minimally visible, and that any attachments will go through the mortar joints. Staff shall approve the lighting details prior to installation. Number 3, the applicant shall work with staff to install one light fixture and reach consensus before continuing to install the remaining light fixtures. Number 4, a maximum of 2 light fixtures per pilaster shall be permitted. Number 5, the chimney shall be removed in a manner that does not damage the building or create unsafe conditions for pedestrians or other property. The applicant provided a letter of support from the Downtown Minneapolis Neighborhood Association, which was included in your packet. Staff have not received any other public comments. My understanding is that the applicant may wish to discuss one of the conditions with you today. This concludes my presentation. I'm happy to stay for questions, and as noted, the applicant is also here and available for questions.
Thank you for that report. Commissioners, are there any questions for staff? Commissioner Corrado.
Question on the catenary lights. Why is it posts on one side but not the other?
Chair Bjornberg, Commissioner Corrado, thank you for that question. The initial idea was to hang the lights from hooks on both sides. I know the applicant had spoken to the adjacent property owner about doing it, and that conversation was kind of ongoing in order to move this through the process. Because they had not yet gotten the written consent of the adjacent property owner, they chose to do posts instead, but you're welcome to ask that question of the applicant as well.
Thank you.
Other questions for staff? Commissioner Thomas.
Hi, thank you, Chair Bjornberg. Is the city aware that Rethos owns a preservation easement on this property? And is the owner aware? And that Rethos will also have to give approval? And how does this impact the decisions made here?
Chair Bjornberg, Commissioner Thomas, thank you for raising that. We did receive a survey on the property. We did not look further into the easements. I know the property owner is aware of an easement. I don't have any more specifics about it, so that might be a good question to ask of them.
Perfect.
Any other comments from staff or questions for staff?
Chair Bjornberg, and then just to direct a question to Commissioner Thomas, we were not aware of that, so I will just state that.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for staff? Okay, thank you. I will now open the public hearing for this item. I understand that the applicant is here and would like to speak. Please come to the microphone and state your name and address for the record.
Thank you, Chair Bjornberg and Commissioners. My name is Erin Fitzgerald, the property owner at 300 First Avenue North. So I would like to, first of all, can I just say I really appreciate what you do. It's a tough job. I love historic buildings. That's why I bought this property, was to make sure that it stayed in really good hands. And I just really do appreciate that we have this in our city to help preserve the history and the character of these buildings, because like you, they really do capture my heart. I'd like to just briefly address condition number 3, which requires us to install one light fixture and reach consensus before installing the rest on the facade of the building. So our intent is to provide up-down lighting on this building because it's a very dark corner. There's a lot of crime that happens there, and we want to illuminate it and kind of be a light in the dark. And so we respectfully ask that this condition be removed or altered. From a practical and financial standpoint, it's not feasible for us to purchase and install a single fixture as a test. The fixtures and all related components have to be ordered as a complete set, and if consensus isn't reached after installing the first light fixture, we'd be left with all of these fixtures that were custom ordered that we can't return. So our intent is to be consistent with the existing lighting found throughout the warehouse district, including the Wyman Building, Butler North, Butler Square, 119 4th Avenue, or 4th Street North. So they align with the character and precedent already established in the warehouse district. We're happy to work closely with staff through condition number 2 to finalize design details and ensure that the fixtures meet all preservation standards. That process already provides a clear opportunity for consensus before installation. But as a practical standpoint, from the building owner, who's spending probably over $100,000, maybe closer to $200,000, I'll want to make sure that the fixtures are exactly as we anticipate on the plans, drawings, and mock-ups before ordering installation. So I think where the discrepancy lies is that we want to do a mock-up installation of one light fixture prior to installing all of them to make sure that it has the lighting effect that we want, but we won't actually drill into the mortar with an actual installation. It would just be holding the light fixtures up to make sure that it's not covering up any architectural elements and that the lighting actually reaches the points that we want it to with that mock-up. So we're happy to alter item number 3 to say this, that we would do this mock-up installation where we rent a boom truck and we get the lighting people up there to make sure that it has the effect. But installing a single light fixture isn't actually practical. So thank you for your consideration of this for considering this clarification. We're committed to maintaining the integrity of this historic property and appreciate your partnership in doing so.
Thank you. Commissioners, are there any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Thomas.
Hi, thank you. Hi, Erin. We've met before. I'm Amy with Rethos. I'm the Director of Real Estate. I do manage our easement program, so I just happen to be very well aware of our preservation easement on this building. So there would be a process where you would need to submit your design request to Rethos as well, and we would go through with our easement committee to approve anything as well.
Okay.
So I just wanted you to be aware of that.
Thank you for making me aware of that.
Yes. And based upon what I'm seeing here, I think what the HPC votes would probably go with Rethos as well, but I just have to present it to the committee as we all manage the easements together, so.
Okay. Yeah, I appreciate that clarification, Commissioner
Yes.
Thomas.
Yes, so I will send you another email about it.
Okay.
And we'll go from there.
Thank you.
Okay. And then while I have the mic, I just also want to say that I definitely support the amendment to item number 3 that she is proposing. Thank you.
Commissioner Corrado.
In the mock-up that you're proposing, would you possibly also be able to, I guess, lift up like a sample bracket? Is that, like, it doesn't have to be the same material, but at least the aesthetics
Okay.
so that
Yeah.
they can tell from the street what it might look like?
Yeah, I think we can probably make that work, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions for the applicant on this item? Commissioner Hare.
Is the chimney in plane with the exterior wall on the, I don't know which facade that is, the one adjacent to the
west
parking lot?
facade,
Yes,
yeah.
thank you.
By in plane, do you mean like just in flat up against it? I don't think so. There's like a little bit of an indentation.
Okay.
Yeah, because it does sit like on the roof.
Okay.
Any other questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any members of the public? Okay, seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Commissioners, let's discuss. Oh, I thought you. Staff, Andrea Burke.
I'm going to make a statement. Andrea Burke, Supervisor for the Historic Preservation Team. Since we were not aware of the easement, and Commissioner Thomas does sit on Rethos and is manager of that program, I would strongly recommend that Commissioner Thomas recuses herself from this vote. At that point, I will leave that decision to Commissioner Thomas, but just considering that there is a connection in a way, not saying that there is any financial conflict, but that would be my recommendation given this situation and the information that's just come to light. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I would be happy to recuse myself from this vote.
She can stay here though, right? Or does she have to leave?
Say that again, Chair Bjornberg.
She doesn't have to leave. She can.
Yeah, she can stay. She
Okay.
just recuses herself when it comes time to vote on this, if that would be my recommendation. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Commissioners, other comments on this? Commissioner Corrado?
I guess, well, I have a couple, but I appreciate the catenary being on posts on one side. I think maybe that it seems like it serves the interest that we don't have to review the next building over as well. Not sure if that's true, but and then on the point of item 3, I understand not having to wire the lights and do everything, so I would assume that the intent of that condition being that we want to see the nighttime and the daytime aesthetic of that fixture. The mock-up sounds reasonable to me.
Other commissioners? I'll sort of, I don't think that it matters because right now the condition says eye hooks on the one side and mortar joints, but I'm sort of laughing because I'm like, I feel like actually mortar joints on both sides would be like easier to repair and like less intrusive. But I'm like, it doesn't matter. We have this condition here. I'll say I'm a little bit split on number 3, just because I do feel like condition number 2 really covers a lot of what is in condition 3. I don't know if it's a typical thing for staff to review mock-ups or if they're usually just reviewing drawings. I feel like that's a more typical thing, but open to what others are thinking. Commissioner Melblom.
I'll speak to that. We often ask contractors to do, as architects, we ask contractors to do mock-ups of something that we want to be assured is going to work as anticipated. So I think the issue of asking for a mock-up, I would agree, does seem reasonable to me, so that they can guarantee they're going to get the lighting that they want, and the city staff can come out and look at it and say, yeah, that looks like what you said you were going to do.
Thank you. I think I'm used to contractors and like the owners working through that process. I'm less used to regulatory bodies reviewing mock-ups. But yeah, Commissioner Melblom.
We often have to do that when we work with anything that is on the register, having SHPO come and actually do inspections. So for anything with brick, typically we'll require them to come and actually look at a mock-up before all the work is done.
Other comments? Anyone ready for a motion? Commissioner Melblom?
Yeah, I'll make the motion. The Heritage, I make the motion, the Heritage Preservation Commission approves the certificate of appropriateness to remove a chimney and make exterior lighting changes for the property located at 300 First Avenue North in the Minneapolis Warehouse District, subject to the following conditions. 1, 2, 4, and 5 remain the same. I'd like to reword number 3 to say, the applicant shall work with staff to install one light fixture mock-up and reach consensus before continuing to install the remaining light fixtures.
Thank you, Commissioner Melblom. Is there a second?
Corrado seconds.
Thank you, Commissioner Corrado. Any discussion? Would the clerk call the roll?
Booty.
Aye.
Hare.
Aye.
Corrado.
Aye.
Melblom.
Aye.
Rodriguez.
Aye.
Vice Chair Maston.
Aye.
Chair Bjornberg.
Aye.
There are 7 ayes.
Thank you. That motion passes. And that concludes our public hearing items. The next item is item number 10, partial 2026 HPC calendar, all wards. Staff memo is presented by Andrea Burke. Should have read that slower.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Andrea Burke, and I'm the supervisor for the Historic Preservation Team in CPED. My slides are now ready. I wanted to just quickly show you the partial calendar for 2026 for your adoption this evening. As you know, the HPC must adopt their calendar prior to the calendar year in which we are meeting. This year is a partial calendar of 2 months because of the upcoming change in council, and the council calendar has not been set yet. We base our calendar off the council's calendar. So our advice from the clerks is where we adopt a partial calendar so we can meet. And I will show you just a slide of what that calendar looks like. Right now, it's just 2 meetings in January and 2 meetings in February, starting on the 13th of January. As you can tell from this slide, we have certain days where we cannot meet due to either holidays or elections, are some of the reasons, so we call them no-night meetings. Once the new council does become seated and they adopt their calendar, I will bring the rest of the 2026 calendar to you for adoption. So with that, staff is recommending that the HPC adopt the partial 2026 Heritage Preservation Commission calendar. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you for that presentation. Commissioners, are there any questions for staff? Would anyone like to make a motion?
I'll go for it.
Madam Chair, I have one small update
Yes.
as well. We are expecting that on Monday, January 5th, they will be bringing forward a full 2026 calendar. And then at that moment, we'll have more information about the rest of our meetings. So this is still our temporary calendar, but that full calendar is going to be set on the 5th.
Thank you for that. Commissioner Maston?
Okay. I'll make a motion that the HPC adopts the partial 2026 Heritage Preservation Commission calendar.
Udi seconds.
Thank you. Any discussion? Would the clerk call roll? Okay, we can just, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All oppose? Any abstentions? Okay, that motion passes. And that concludes our discussion items. I'll start with one announcement that we have a new clerk, Rachel. That's all. Any announcements from staff?
Thank you. Chair Bjornberg, I figured I would just stay here instead of circling back if that is okay. I just have 2 quick announcements. One, wanted to say thank you to Travis, Commissioner Travis Hare, for this will be his last meeting. He is unable to attend the next, and want to thank him for his time on the HPC and for sticking with us, and appreciate you having you here through what have been some very large items coming through. So appreciate your time. Also, yes, thank you. Welcome, Rachel. But also wanted to get a gauge for attendance at the last meeting. So we're coming up on our last meeting of 2025, which is December 2nd. That is a Tuesday. It is not a Monday. And I will send out a message to commissioners to ensure that we have quorum. As you know, at the last meeting of the year, sometimes either we have lots of agenda items or we have very few agenda items, but it can be sometimes challenging with vacations and other times to ensure that we have quorum. So wanted to just put that as a notice to you, and we'll communicate that way going forward. But that concludes my updates. Thank you.
Thank you. Do commissioners have any other updates? All right, with that, we've completed all items on the agenda, and there being no other business to come before this meeting without objection, I will declare the meeting adjourned. Next regular meeting is December 2nd. Thank you.